So for the thought record, I want to use this particular automatic thought that we've just been discussing with Jeff.
Okay.
So what I have here is kind of, again, really helpful to do a written version.
Okay.
Sometimes over time we can start doing these without writing them down, but I think it's always helpful. It's helpful for me too to track.
Yeah.
One thing I'll tell you right now, there's a before and after piece.
Okay.
Sometimes I have this included here or not. The copy I have here includes it here because for you, I kind of want you to see what's coming up next,
Okay.
but we're not going to do it yet, and I'll explain why in a second. This particular thought record, the before part, simply goes through, and we're going to write these out in a moment.
Yep.
What was the event? What were your thoughts? Your emotions?
Okay.
Your behaviors, and what came of them. You notice there's additional questions within each box?
Yep.
Okay. So for now, that's all we're going to have you do for a homework assignment,
Okay.
is we're going to practice one now using the one we just discussed with Jeff.
Okay.
It's fresh.
Yeah.
A little bit easier to kind of go through with that as a practice exercise. And then we'll talk at the end how maybe practicing one or two of these between now and next week could be helpful when we come back and review for homework.
Okay.
The piece down here, just because you could be curious, is eventually we're going to kind of consider some alternative ways of thinking of thoughts. We actually already did some of these. We talked about validity, alternative explanations, and what we would tell a friend. But I don't want to move too much too quickly.
Okay.
It's one thing to do it in session together, but I first want to have you practice this alone, and then we come back and try that later. Okay? So this part's a no-brainer. We don't have to worry about the exact date, but what's today? Friday?
Today's Friday.
Friday. Okay. Sometimes days a week, sometimes play a role.
Yeah.
Sometimes time of day too.
Yeah.
I mean, we know it was afternoon.
Yeah.
So we'll just put afternoon. Okay. And so what was the actual event? I know we just discussed it, but how would we describe it?
Asking Jeff to lunch.
There you go.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So sometimes we do have thoughts and feelings where we're not even aware of where they started.
Yeah.
Like, triggering event might be too strong of an expression, but there's something that started this. And that, I agree, that's, granted you were feeling a little emotional before then, but the key point is, this is where it started, when you asked Jeff. And so, you asked Jeff to lunch. I would also maybe throw in too, did Jeff say yes or no?
No.
Jeff said no. Just to provide a little bit more context there.
Okay.
So then, what's been the specific automatic thought we've been talking about?
That Jeff doesn't want to spend time with me.
Okay. How much at the time? The reason why I'm saying at the time instead of now, and because it is still kind of fresh, and then when you do these, you're going to try to be as recent as you can.
Yeah.
How much at the time did you believe that thought?
I mean, it's probably like at an 8 or a 9.
Okay. That's recall you said that earlier too. It was in the 8-ish range.
Yeah.
I wrote down 8 or 9. Yeah. And sometimes this is or isn't relevant where we're focusing on, but what type of cognitive distortion have we been calling this?
The personalization.
Yeah. Sometimes the way they're labeled, they don't always follow the exact scope.
Yeah.
There's other ways, you could argue, you maybe jump to conclusions, but I think for you to call it this, where you really personalize events, is a good theme for you to focus on. So I would agree with that. As a little tip, we have reviewed cognitive distortions a little bit.
Yeah.
If you're not sure, because you may have a different type of thought, do your best to fill it in, but don't worry if it's wrong or right.
Okay.
That's more for us to talk about in next session. Okay, it may or may not be relevant. There was one particular emotion especially that you used that kind of struck with me when you described it.
Hurt.
And at the time, how intense was that emotion?
Again, probably like an 8, maybe even closer to the 9.
Okay. So at least an 8.
Yeah.
Maybe a 9. And again, I don't get too picky about those. The point is what's important for you.
Yeah.
So in my mind, as your therapist, I might be thinking 8, 8.5, 9. The point is, it's up there.
Yeah.
It's up there. It's high. So you ask Jeff out to lunch. He says no. Jeff has no time for me. For me. What was your response? What'd you do?
I still went out to lunch.
Okay.
Went to McDonald's, though, not the sub shop that I wanted to go to. Then I just kind of went and sat by myself in the park.
just literally wrote down, you said you still went out to lunch. Yep. You went to McDonald's, a place that initially wasn't what is going to be your place. And then you sat by yourself in the park and ate there. This here it depends on the context of how you look at it, but the outcome, the first question says, what was the outcome of your behavior?
I mean, I guess I felt lonely. Mm-hmm. Felt isolated. I mean, outcome, I still got lunch, mm-hmm. but...
Still got lunch, but felt lonely, isolated. This here could go in either way, but just because I am getting to know your thinking a little bit more, I might even put in rumination.
Yeah.
You could argue that it falls under there, but the point is that the outcome is not only you sitting there isolated, you're thinking of it. That's exactly. And then the last part are, as you're sitting here even now or even afterwards when you're reflecting, how did you think or feel about the outcome itself, about what happened here?
I felt bad. I kind of felt sad, maybe a little guilty that I kind of done this by myself and kind of was just alone.
So I wrote down bad, sad, guilty, a little bit of that self-perpetuating component, right? You have some thoughts and behaviors, and then we reflect upon that as well. Do you remember any other thoughts that you may have had? There was something that kind of you mentioned as well. It's okay if you don't remember. It was kind of like a core belief.
Just that kind of hard to like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something. I don't remember the exact words that you said before as well, but it was something to the effect of hard to like, or people don't want to be with me.
Yeah, people don't want to spend that time with me.
And so I think for you, and you don't always have to write core beliefs.
Okay.
Just any thoughts, but for you it stuck out for me, and I've heard you even use this word before, and so that's why I'm writing it down here. And this is something we're going to explore the next couple of weeks. Your core beliefs, unlikable. Do you say that's kind of fair at this? Okay. So when you do that, you don't have to worry about if it's a core belief or not. It's just because I'm here sitting with you.
Okay.
I'm going to identify that for you, but be sure to kind of put down both your thoughts and emotions after the fact. Again, I say that especially for you because it's not only your thoughts initially, you kind of beat yourself up afterwards. And I think, of course, when we break this chain here, there's a less of a chance for this, but I like to take as many approaches as possible. Like even later down the road when therapy's over, let's minimize the opportunity for automatic thoughts, but even when we do have them, maybe we can respond to them. The negative automatic thoughts, how we respond to them. Does that sound good? So what I would like you to do, and we'll review this later before we go, to clarify the details, I want you to at least try one, maybe two.
Okay.
I'm feeling a little ambitious with you just because you did a good job with the evidence.
And then that's just the before.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. What I'll do is I'm showing you this one here as a demonstration. I got a couple copies where I'll take this out so you don't have to worry about it. I just wanted to show you this how we already did some parts of it. And I think by next week, again, do the best you can fill it out. Don't worry if it's perfect. We'll review at least one, maybe two, and then we'll decide if we're ready to then use this thought record to challenge those thoughts afterwards. I'll remind you, too, I know when we were talking about some of the behavioral monitoring, it felt a little silly to whip out a piece of paper at work because, of course, sometimes you have negative automatic thoughts at home, but sometimes you have them at work as well. So I'd remind you to use that app that you told me you enjoyed using as well to kind of just track down those thoughts. That way, later on, you can fill in the blanks on the paper, but if you got a thought, you go back to your office,
just type
it right in, however you think's best. Put in those emotions, those thoughts, anything like that, and then later on you can fill it in if you're more comfortable with that.
Sounds pretty doable.
All right, so you ready to move forward then?
Yeah.
All right.